Imagine, just for a second, that you were standing in the center of an ancient, sprawling royal court.
Oh, set the scene.
Right, so the air is thick with incense, the floors are this polished marble, and you're watching a humble fisherman present a gift to the king.
Hmm,
But it isn't just any gift.
definitely no.
It's a fish. And this thing is absolutely mesmerizing. I mean, the text we're looking at today describes it as having a body that shines like silver and pearl, eyes like red rubies, and it literally looks like it's constructed out of pure condensed light.
Which is such a striking visual.
It really is. So you watch as someone takes this unbelievable shimmering creature and places it gently into the large palace pool. And suddenly it leaps from the water, twists on the marble floor, and in this flash of impossible geometry, it transforms.
Right in front of everyone.
Exactly. Right in front of you, shivering on the stones, is a breathtakingly beautiful young woman with waist-length black hair and skin as luminous as the 14th moon.
It's wild.
We've all heard tales of magic and transformation, but the full, detailed version of Julnar of the Sea and the Silver Prince, which is buried within the 1001 Nights, well, it isn't just a simple fairy tale about a magic fish.
No, not at all.
It's this ancient, complex masterclass in navigating dual identities, the often violent mechanics of cultural assimilation, and the highly volatile power dynamics of royal legacy.
Yeah, there is a lot going on under the surface, literally.
Literally. So we have a stack of sources detailing this epic, and our mission for this deep dive today is to pull apart the coral palaces and the sea magic to see what this story is really trying to tell us about blending two vastly different worlds.
And to really grasp the mechanics of what happens when these two worlds collide, we have to start by grounding ourselves in the terrestrial world first.
Right. The land kingdom.
Exactly. The story kicks off in an ancient kingdom by the Some historical translations pinpoint this as Khwarezm, or just simply the broad eastern lands, and it's ruled by King Shah Zaman.
Who's basically crushing it, right?
Oh, absolutely. By every metric of the ancient world, this man has won the game of life. He possesses immense wealth, sweeping geopolitical power, and a rock-solid reputation for justice and kindness.
But there's a catch.
There's always a catch. Beneath all that opulence, there is a massive gaping void in his life. He doesn't have a child.
Which is a big deal.
Huge. You have to understand that in an ancient monarchy, a king without an heir isn't just dealing with a personal disappointment. He is sitting on top of an existential crisis.
Because a kingdom without a successor is basically a kingdom waiting for a civil war.
Exactly. It creates this profound, aching vulnerability in a man who otherwise has total control over his universe. And that vulnerability is the engine that drives everything that follows.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the way that geopolitical vulnerability is answered is entirely unexpected.
Yeah, it really is.
The fisherman brings this miraculous silver and pearl fish. The transformation happens in the palace pool, and we find out this luminous woman's name is Julnar. And immediately I find myself pushing back against the standard tropes we usually see in ancient folklore.
How so?
Well, typically a king sees a magical, beautiful woman, decides he wants her, and basically uses his supreme authority to force her into marriage or captivity.
Right, the whole damsel in distress or captured magical creature trope.
Exactly. But the sources point out a very different mechanism at play here. There is a surprising, explicit element of choice. At one point, Julnar actually looks at this powerful king and says, "If you return me to the sea, I will pray for you."
She offers him a deal.
Yes.
Yeah.
She is actively offering him a magical blessing in exchange for her freedom. It completely flips the script. It's like a magical hostage situation that suddenly turns into a mutual negotiation.
What's fascinating here is the specific historical and mythological context of Julnar's backstory, because it completely reframes why she is negotiating in the first place.
Right, she's not just a random fish.
No, she isn't just a generic magical creature that stumbled into a net. She belongs to the tribe of the sea people, and more specifically, she is a peri of the ocean.
And a peri is a pretty big deal in this mythology, right?
Huge. For context, a peri in this specific mythological framework isn't just like a fairy with wings. Peris are immensely powerful ancient spirits from Persian lore. They have their own complex societies, their own royal hierarchies, and their own brutal wars.
Wow.
Yeah. Julnar is the daughter of a sea prince, and she reveals that she was transformed into this helpless fish because of a massive storm and the dark magic of her political enemies.
So she's running for her life.
She is essentially a royal refugee fleeing an underwater coup. So when King Shah Zaman proposes to her, promising to elevate her to his queen and grant her lifelong honor, she hesitates. She doesn't just fall into his arms out of gratitude.
Which makes perfect sense when you look at it from her perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, she is an apex predator of the ocean, a royal magic user who just barely survived an assassination attempt via fish transformation.
Right, she's got to be hypervigilant.
Of course she is. Why would a magical being of her caliber care about the promises of a human king who can't even breathe underwater?
Well, she cares because of what he represents, profound stability.
Ah, okay.
The text is very clear that she ultimately accepts his proposal, not because she is overwhelmed by his wealth, but because she actively recognizes his justice, his kindness, and his steady, noble character.
She sees past the whole human limitation thing.
Exactly. She looks completely past the fact that he is a human with a finite lifespan, and she sees a safe harbor. It is a partnership built entirely on mutual respect and calculated trust.
That is an incredibly mature, healthy foundation for a story that features shape-shifting sorcerers.
It really is. It asks you, the listener, to think about how you evaluate the chaotic elements in your own life. Do you judge a situation based on a chaotic first impression, like Julnar appearing out of thin air after a storm of enemy magic? Or do you take the time to look for underlying character and long-term stability?
Which is exactly the calculus Jonor applied to the human king. And that calculus pays off brilliantly for both of them. I mean, they hold this massive, grand wedding. She takes the throne as queen, and she earns the deep respect of the entire terrestrial kingdom.
And they finally solve the succession crisis.
Yes. Eventually, the ultimate goal is achieved. They have a son. They name him Badr Basim, which translates beautifully to smiling full moon.
It's a great name.
It really is. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the narrative suddenly shifts to explore a very modern-feeling, mixed-heritage family dynamic.
Oh, totally.
King Shah Zaman doesn't do what a paranoid ruler might do. He doesn't lock Julnar away in his human world to secure his heir. He actually encourages her to visit the ocean, to see her relatives, and to maintain her ties.
Which is so rare for these old stories.
Right. But more importantly, Julnar actively teaches young Badr Basim the sciences of the sea and the magic of the water people, right alongside his father's lessons on human governance.
He's getting the best of both worlds.
Think about the sheer advantage of this. It's like an heir to a massive corporate empire secretly getting a second PhD in underwater wizardry on the weekends.
That is a perfect way to put it.
He is learning two completely different operational systems for how to move through the world.
And the mechanics of that dual education are vital to understanding the story's view on cultural blending. Badr Basim is never asked to partition his identity.
He doesn't have to choose.
No, he isn't forced to choose between his father's methodical terrestrial kingdom, which values laws and diplomacy, and his mother's oceanic origins, which operate on elemental power and ancient magic.
He just absorbs both.
He is actively nurtured to master both languages of power. When he comes of age, Julnar actually takes him beneath the waves with the king's full blessing. They travel to these sprawling coral palaces.
I can't even imagine what that looked like.
Right. Badr gets to know his aquatic extended family. He practices magic firsthand in its native environment, and he experiences the raw, untamed reality of the ocean. He becomes a living, breathing bridge between two ecosystems that usually have nothing to do with one another.
But the crucial detail is that he always returns to the land.
Hmm.
I mean, he goes down, learns the magic, has the adventures, but his tether to his human father pulls him back.
That's a very deliberate balance.
It's this incredibly delicate, perfectly calibrated harmony. But you can probably see where this is heading.
Yeah, the other shoe has to drop.
That balance relies entirely on the gravity of his father's terrestrial authority.
Yeah.
And then, inevitably, King Shah Zaman dies.
And that death doesn't just trigger a standard royal succession. It creates an immediate, gaping cultural vacuum.
Right, because Badr is now in charge.
Yes. Badr Basim ascends the human throne. He takes up the mantle, ruling with the exact same justice and steady kindness that defined his father's reign. On paper, the transition is flawless.
Internally.
Internally, the perfect equilibrium of his parents' generation shatters. The text emphasizes that, with his father gone, Badr's heart develops an overwhelming gravitational pull back toward his mother's world.
So the land isn't enough anymore.
The peace and stability forged by Shah-Zaman gives way to a profound identity crisis in the sun. The terrestrial world is no longer enough to anchor him, and he leaves his land kingdom behind to plunge back into the sea.
Which sends him sprinting headfirst into a massive magical clash of cultures. So he travels back to the ocean depths with his mother, and they head to the central coral palace to meet his grandfather, the supreme king of the sea.
This is where things get complicated.
Very complicated. Now, I have to pause here because the sources throw a massive curveball into the family tree that we just cannot ignore.
Well, I know where you're going with this.
The text states that while Badir is visiting his grandfather, he lays eyes on a woman named Jawhara, whose name means jewel. He falls madly, instantly in love with her. But the lineage is explicitly laid out. Jawhara is the granddaughter of the Sea King. If Badru is the Sea King's grandson, and Jawhara is the Sea King's granddaughter, we are dealing with some very intense royal cousin dynamics here.
It's definitely a choice.
It's a very jarring detail to just gloss over.
It is definitely jarring to a modern audience, but it serves a very specific mechanical purpose in ancient mythologies. Consolidating power within a single elite bloodline was a common historical strategy to prevent the dilution of magical or political authority.
So it's more about keeping the magic in-house.
Exactly. The story isn't focused on the genetics, it's using their shared lineage to set up an ideological battle. Both of them are royalty of the sea, but they represent entirely different approaches to power.
And Jawhara's approach to power is absolutely brutal.
Brutal is the word.
Because Badir Basim, who is a wealthy king, a master of magic, and her literal equal in royal standing, steps up and formally asks for her hand in marriage. She doesn't just politely decline. She doesn't even just laugh him out of the room. She taps into her sea magic, physically transforms this powerful human king into a bird, and physically banishes him to a deserted island in the middle of nowhere.
It is a stunning escalation.
I mean, we talk about people being ghosted today, but turning a reigning monarch into a bird and leaving him on a deserted island for months is the most extreme swipe left in history. It almost defies logic.
It's savage.
It's not just a no, it's an absolute stripping of his diplomatic immunity, his royal identity, and his humanity all at once.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this specific act of transformation is the hinge on which the entire narrative turns. Think about the stark contrast between the generations here.
Right, how the parents handled things versus the kids.
King Shah-Zaman won Julnar's hand through patience, offering a safe haven and demonstrating a gentle, stabilizing strength. Badir Basim attempts to use those same terrestrial diplomatic tools. He asks politely, he offers alliances, but he runs directly into a wall of intense, uncompromising oceanic pride.
He brought a treaty to a magic fight.
Exactly. In these ancient epics, extreme pride often functions as a catalyst that forces a character to be stripped down to their core. By turning him into a bird, Jawhara doesn't just insult him, she neutralizes him entirely.
I want to dig into why a bird, specifically. Why not a fish or, I don't know, a rock?
Good question.
Because transforming him into a bird leaves him trapped in the sky, completely alienated from both the land of his father, where he rules, and the sea of his mother, where he belongs. He has two passports, two distinct identities, and in a single spell, she renders him completely stateless.
That is precisely the mechanism at work. A bird is fragile. A king who commands human armies and wields deep-sea magic is reduced to a creature that can be killed by a passing hawk or a bad storm.
He's completely powerless.
It represents total voicelessness. He cannot issue decrees, he cannot cast spells, he cannot even tell anyone who he is. He is forced into a state of absolute vulnerability, completely dependent on the very oceanic forces that rejected him.
And he's stuck there.
He has to wait in this agonizing state of suspension until his mother, Julnar, and her political allies can intervene.
And Julnar does not hesitate. She mobilizes the sea sorcerers, tracks him down to this barren rock, and finally shatters the spell, restoring Badir to his human form.
Which is a relief, but the damage is done.
Oh, yeah. You have to imagine the psychological state of Badir Basim at this exact moment. He has spent months trapped in the body of a prey animal. He is humiliated, he is furious, and he is absolutely done with terrestrial diplomacy.
He is out for blood.
He declares an all-out apocalyptic war on Jawhara and her royal faction. The sources describe these immense violent battles of sea magic spells colliding underwater, coral palaces besieged, armies of water spirits clashing. It is total war.
The scale is massive.
And eventually, using his dual knowledge and Julnar's vast power, Badir Basim completely crushes Johara's forces. He defeats her.
The military and magical conflict finds its resolution, but it is the emotional aftermath that usually stops readers dead in their tracks.
I am definitely one of those readers, because I am struggling to square how this story actually resolves.
So what does this all mean?
It's complicated.
It's wild. Jauhara hated Badr enough to turn him into a fragile bird and abandon him to die. Badr responds by waging a brutal war that overthrows her entire family structure, and the immediate result of him destroying her army is that she falls deeply in love with his bravery and prowess.
That's how it's written.
She apologizes, he instantly forgives the bird incident, and they get married. From a modern psychological perspective, this sounds like a terrifyingly toxic dynamic. I mean, I crushed your empire, now you respect me enough to love me. How are we supposed to parse that without just throwing our hands up?
This raises an important question about how different cultures define the currency of respect, which is really the core thesis of this entire saga. You have to separate the terrestrial value system from the oceanic one.
Okay, lay that out for me. Well, King Shah Zaman's land kingdom operated on a currency of justice, kindness, and administrative stability. That is how he earned Julnar's respect. But the underwater realm of the sea people, as Johara embodies it, does not respect administrative stability.
They don't care about treaties.
Not at all. It is an elemental culture. It respects raw power, magical dominance, and martial supremacy.
So because Johara possessed this towering elemental pride, she was literally incapable of respecting a diplomatic proposal. She needed him to prove that he could survive in her arena.
Exactly that. Kindness meant nothing to her, because kindness, in her worldview, might just be a mask for weakness. Her pride demanded to be matched by an equal or greater force.
Wow.
Bad Basim's ability to strip away his polite terrestrial diplomacy and successfully wage a brutal magical war proved his worth in her native language.
He spoke her language of violence.
Yes. The story of Badir and Johara isn't just a messy romance. It's an ancient mythological blueprint for cultural assimilation. It suggests that true integration between radically different cultures rarely happens through simple, polite diplomacy. It often requires one side to vividly demonstrate that they can speak the other's language of power. Once Badir proved he was an apex predator of the sea, they could finally see eye to eye.
That completely reframes the entire conflict. They had to fight a literal war to figure out how to translate their identities to one another, and the geographical conclusion to this epic is the final piece of the puzzle.
Right, where they end up.
After all this chaos, the bird transformation, the shattering of the coral palaces, they don't stay in the ocean to rule. They pack up and return to the surface.
And not just anywhere on the surface. They move specifically to Baghdad.
Right. They establish their court in Baghdad, and the text tells us they rule there with justice and happiness for years. They have children, and they pass this incredible, violent, magical history down through the generations. It's such a deliberate choice to end the story far away from the ocean.
Because it represents a hard-won final synthesis. The first generation, Shah Zaman and Julnar, found peace through a mutual agreement of protection.
The safe harbor.
Exactly. The second generation, Badir and Johara, had to violently clash to integrate their dual natures. By bringing Johara out of the sea and placing their new dynasty in Baghdad, Badir is essentially reestablishing the terrestrial balance his father created. But he is doing it on his own terms, having fully integrated the volatile power of the ocean into his human rule.
Which brings this entire massive saga right back to you, the listener. You might not be dealing with sea sorcerers or worrying about a bad date turning you into a seagull.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. But the architecture of this story is deeply relevant. It asks you to look at the different, sometimes conflicting cultural or familial histories that make up your own identity.
We all have those dualities.
We do. You probably have a bit of the calm, orderly land and a bit of the chaotic, emotional sea in your own background. The story implies that you can't just ignore one half. You have to do the hard, sometimes messy work of figuring out how those elements translate to one another if you want to chart a stable path forward.
It reminds us that our personal histories are rarely simple narratives of peace. Understanding the chaotic forces that shaped our ancestors is the only way to understand the forces operating within ourselves.
And that is exactly the thought I want to leave you with today. Look at the children of Badir Basim and Johara. They are growing up in the bustling terrestrial city of Baghdad, hundreds of miles from the crashing waves.
A completely different environment.
But consider the unbelievable legacy running in their veins. They carry the blood of a gentle human king, a sea-born Peri who survived assassination, A father who spent months trapped in the sky as a bird before leveling an ocean, and a fiercely proud mother who demanded a magical war before she would yield.
That's quite the family tree.
It is. So as those children walk the orderly streets of Baghdad, you have to wonder, will this third generation truly inherit the lasting peace and justice of the land? Or is the volatile, proud magic of the ocean just waiting to resurface in the streets of Baghdad?